Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Transgender Show. I'm your host, Emily. Tonight, I am very excited to welcome to the show Mylee Blake. Mylee is a filmmaker, immersive designer, and psychedelic facilitator. She also leads silent meditation and is currently working on changing the world one mind at a time while wondering, does this count as a business casual outfit? Everyone, welcome to the show, Mylee. Hello.
Hey, how's it going? Hi,
Good, good. How are
everybody.
you?
Good. I'm great. A little nervous to be here. It's a
Really?
little
Oh,
like
it's
live TV. This is different.
Yeah, we've got a small audience so far, but it'll pick up in a little bit. Everybody, thank you
hmm
for coming and being here on time. We were so a little bit behind schedule. I've got a couple things still to fiddle around with my camera. I've got a whole new setup here and still trying to get everything dialed in.
Well, we can. You want to give me just a topic to talk on while you do that? While you're adjusting everything, I'll try to riff for the audience, the like people that are here.
I really appreciate it. I appreciate that professionalism and that ability to jump in and do that, but we won't need to. I can just, there we go. So
Okay,
it's
great.
already ready already.
Sweet. Done.
So, Kari Aiden says, hello, Mylee. I know more than Mimi is here and is a fan. So let's go ahead and jump into your story and talk about all of the things that you've been through. Starting with my favorite question, how did you choose your name?
Oh, okay. So, I went through a lot of names. Most of them didn't stick. And I was really stuck with that as part of my identity. It was a really interesting part of my transition, having like figuring out what my name was going to be, and it never like I didn't want to name myself is what I kind of realized. And so I was just going by my birth name. And I was, at the time, I was holding a bit more of a non-binary identity. And
Mhm.
now I identify as a trans woman. But it was, and nothing was sticking. I was on a film shoot in Texas. I had gone there to do some live show, and I invited an old friend to come and hang out in the hotel room with me because I had this nice hotel room, and I knew they had been wandering around, and I didn't know how bad their situation had gotten. And it turns out that they needed like some time to detox from some hard drugs. So it worked out that we were in this situation together. I did not know that going into this, which was kind of the interesting part to me. It was like, oh, I got to do this job, but now my friend needs me. Wow, isn't it funny how life turns all those things to you? So I was doing this job and coming home in the afternoons and supporting her, and I was holding her hair back as she was letting go of her demons per se, and she said, wow, Mylee, this is so nice. This is just so nice for you to be the one to help me move through to this next phase. And she's going on and on and withdrawal delirium, but she kept using the name Mylee. And at the end of that, I was like, wow, this is actually a really great name. It's sticking. It's a it's kind of a shortening, softening of my birth name. So I felt like I was still honoring my family, and it all just kind of came together. And that is how I got my name. I was given my name as for somebody who I was supporting through them going through withdrawal to get sober. And as far as I know, they're still very wacky in their life, but they are sober from opiates, and that makes me really happy.
Well, that's very awesome that that one, you were able to be there and be that for that person, but then also that you got a name out of it. That's great.
Yeah, yeah. It's that's why I like telling that story. It was really difficult to figure out what my name was going to be until this person just kind of channeled it through, and it stuck.
Hmm. So, just to clarify, how do you identify under the trans umbrella?
Yeah, I'm a trans woman. I go by she, her. I live as a woman. I've changed all my paperwork. This is who I am.
Great. I will get that set. I did not have that set up from before. So there we go. Now we got she, her on there. Perfect.
Oh, great. Thank you.
It was set from before as she, they, and I'm like, I don't think that's correct. So I just turned it off and figured we'd work it out. That's great.
Mhm.
So working at the most recent point in the timeline, and then we'll go backward from there. When did you
Great.
realize that the term transgender applied to you? I know a lot of us kind of start learning about it late in life a lot of times, and then finally apply it to ourselves even later. So when was that period for you?
Oh, so I think it was when I was probably 9 or 10. I stayed home from school a lot. I was sick a lot as a kid, or would play sick a lot, and I watched a lot of daytime TV. And not in the best way, but trans people were pretty well exposed on daytime television. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you could see a nice variety of drag queens to transsexuals to trans women to the whole kind of spectrum of trans would show up on, you know, Jenny Jones or Sally Jesse Raphael, or even more sensationally Maury Povich. All of these shows kind of presented trans people to me as like, oh, that's like an option. They're
Mm-hmm.
extremely misunderstood by everybody, but that seems to be like not really getting in their way too much, huh? There's this whole kind of world of people exploring all this, and that was probably my first real exposures. And then I was sort of and then Rocky Horror as a teenager was the next kind of exposure that I had of like, oh, there's this whole world where people are kind of playing in these roles, and it blossomed from there. I found myself, you know, at goth clubs and queer clubs as a late teenager, and going to circuit parties and exploring all of these different facets of my sexuality, and the people that go around when you explore all facets of your sexuality, and eventually it landed on my gender, to where I knew that this was something that I needed to explore and do for myself. Yeah, at a very, very young age. And I made the decision that like once I hit like, okay, once I'm stable and on my own, like out of college, that's when I'll start really tackling this in therapy. And so I did. And that's probably a few questions down. But
So,
yeah, yeah.
oh, go ahead and finish your thought. Sorry about that.
Oh, no, I think yeah, I would say it was that exposure that then opened me up to wanting to go and find these places where they hung out, and
Mhm.
find some support groups. And I can talk about my experience with that in a little bit too.
Yeah, when were you able to finally present in public as the real you?
Oh, so since I with each phase, I guess this part it wasn't until I was in my mid, like I played with it in my 20s, but this real phase, you know, not no going back, no way up and down waves, you know, of uncertainty and self-doubt and all that.
Mhm.
I would say from this was like 37. I'm 44 now, so I guess 7 or 8 years ago. But I always I started on a very low dose of hormones when I was in my early 20s, because I had met a doctor and then an endocrinologist, and I was having some really strange cyclical depression. And because this was like something that I had been thinking about and was a thought that I always came back to, I had my gender therapist had said, "Hey, just start on a very low dose. If it makes you feel better, like you can not have to take these antidepressants, and we can just balance you out with like your body, your natural chemistry, and see how you feel." And so my journey started that way, with a very slow undoing of testosterone poisoning, I guess, as we're calling it now.
Mhm. Well, that's great that you were able to find a doctor at that time. That would have been several years ago then that saw
Yeah,
through to that and saw that that was something that would actually help
yeah,
you.
mid 2000s, and I was lucky that I moved to New York after college, New York City, and a lot of resources here, and I was lucky enough to have the wherewithal to go and care about myself to try.
So once you decided that it was time to come out, once you fully applied the transgender label to yourself,
Mhm.
was there any kind of period of adjustment or accepting yourself, or since it had been since you were really young, was it something that you
Yeah.
just sort of jumped at?
I jumped at it, but real slow. Like all of my friends who've known me for a long time have known this about me, because I would talk about it almost immediately, even no matter where I was in the phase or the spectrum at that moment. Because I had dated somebody and I didn't tell them about being trans, and it all exploded in my face, which when you're in your mid 20s and it's your first living relationship of love, it's like, oh, I could never do this to someone again. And I kind of took that to heart, that lesson to heart, and would just talk about how I was trans and this is where I've been and this is what I'm going through. I would say that so it was kind of most of my friends were like, oh, finally. It was more of a like final like cliff jump forever.
Hmm.
I don't know. It's like I'm still falling. So the like you, I just jumped, and each piece of the puzzle. I like had friends who were supportive and would say, "Hey, don't rush into things. Just go real slow. It'll come together." It's like blossoming of a flower, telling me all these great analogies about growing into womanhood, and most of them were right. So I would say that yeah, I once I decided to not. I think it was on my 40th birthday, the day like a few days before. I knew that this is where I was going. It wasn't going back. I wasn't going to make any decisions. Like this is where I was committed to, and for myself, and I was really clear. And so I showed up to work on like January 12th to a brand new job as myself. So my birthday's Christmas. So it was like, yeah, I just did it. And then growing into myself happened concurrently, I
Hmm.
guess, through my awkward phase and to now. It's like we all I like to think of my internal age as being somewhere around 27. I'm about to get through my Saturn returns, and then it'll be great.
That's such a good exercise to go through and determine. I think I'm definitely through the bulk of my awkward teen phase,
Mhm.
and into the kind of professional adult sort of phase of being trans. But yeah, it's so sad that it's something that we all must go through. But when you consider that cis women go through it over a period of many years and figured out gradually. It makes a lot of sense. I had hoped in what you were saying about your story that you would have kind of been able to mitigate some of that with the slow process of going through this
Mhm.
gradually.
No, I in fact it became multiple awkward phases because I would kind of stop before I got through the awkward phase, and then when I rediscover my deep transness, I would then go through a new awkward phase. So it was I kind of it's like just didn't go as smooth as you'd think. Yeah, there was
You
a few. I have pictures. It's all really funny.
you can try and avoid it, but it's just something that we all got to go through.
Oh,
It's sort of the rite of passage, and there's a lot to laugh about in being trans, and there's a
mhm.
lot of like cringy stuff, and that's just something that will give you memories forever to cherish of like, oh, look at that silly girl who didn't know crap.
Yep. What I like thinking about is like, damn, I thought I was hot then. Like, wow, this is crazy. This is a crazy experience.
Let's move on to coming out. What was your process for coming out to friends and family in the greater world?
Mm. So I kind of so when I was 26, I told my mom, and I was dating someone. I was dating this person that I was in this relationship with, and she's like, "You haven't even told your mom." And I'm like, "Well, I guess you're right about that." So I told my mom when I went down there on a trip. I told her the last night, right when she was going to bed, and I was leaving the next morning. I was like, "We'll talk more about it. Bye." and and we did. But I just wanted to drop the bomb and let it be processed and not have to be there for the process, because like that's not really my responsibility, you know. And I knew that then. So and then I told my dad, and my dad, his his reaction was, "So are you going to start wearing formal gowns to all the family gatherings? Or like, how is this going to work? I don't really understand. I don't agree with it. Like, are you, this is kind of like, what are the neighbors?" It was all, what are the neighbors going to think, was his viewpoint. And I said, well, they're going to think that whatever they want, no matter what, they'll either see me as a happy person or a sad person. So you can choose to think of that however you want. And so I don't, that side of the family, I don't shove any of this in their face. I don't know. I tend to with him, I stay pretty hands off because of how our relationship is and his capacity for understanding deep concepts in the universe outside of himself. So that was like kind of the family process. My brother knows, he supports me fully, and we have each other's backs no matter what. We have very separate lives. I am very adventurous and nomadic, and they're roots people. I don't get it. So so they have that was that process, and then friends. It was just like always a part of me. I was around a lot of different like forward kind of party communities, sex party communities, rave communities. Anywhere there was people pushing the boundaries of experience, I would try to participate in that. And so everyone, a lot of those people are already open minded and are just like, yeah, baby, let yourself fly. Whoever you want to be it. And it's very inspiring. And then there's a lot of like posturing in those scenes though, where the men think they're evolved because they wear nail polish, or and then they can't gender trans people correctly. It's a very strange dichotomy in those worlds, but it's very accepting, at least on the surface. So no one, I've rarely felt uncomfortable or stared at, which I find like like quite a blessing for my experience.
Yeah, that's great that you've found a good group of people to be around and to be just, you know, regardless of like how much it really sinks in for them, just you don't catch any crap. You can feel comfortable
Yeah,
in yourself. That's great.
and like them seeing it just slowly, it just go step by step, stop wearing jeans, start wearing slightly more fitted clothing, start taking care of myself. All of the little pieces of the clues that kind of happen when a trans woman starts blossoming.
Hmm.
And and then them being like, oh, cool, great, you're just more you. And the therapist that I had was really big on me trying to integrate my old self into my new self, because the new self is still the old self, just better. And so that took me a long time to get to feel okay with that, not having to lose all of the great parts of who I am and my soul and my core. And as I like worked on making everything congruent.
Hmm. Did you have anybody during this time that supported you in a way or to an amount that you didn't expect?
Yeah, almost everybody, frankly. So many of my friends just wanted to understand and take me shopping, or show me what I was doing wrong, how I could be more natural, how I could, and asked me how I was feeling a lot. Like I got asked like, what's the process like? And I'm an open book, so I had no real feelings about keeping it from people. For me, I believe that we'll get more, like I'll get more understanding in the world, and at large, more trans people will get more understanding in the world if I'm open, if I'm comfortable with being open. So I'm willing to do that out there, and so it's always been like. I lived with somebody for 4 years who turned out to be my platonic life partner. We're still like friendship married, and we still talk all the time. And they were probably the most supportive through the ups and downs, and never judged me for any of it. Like she never thought like, oh, this person's wacky or got all these issues because they're like going back and forth and like unstable and stable and figuring it out and throwing their stuff out and then going buy more stuff and like going through all these strange like just being at your own like one's own brick wall, and like you got the sledgehammer and you're standing at the wall, you're trying to like smash it down but you can't. And she really stood for me during all that time, and we're still really close, and I'm very, very grateful for that. As well as like anybody who's ever lived with me, which is a large amount of people at this point in my life, really, it's not easy living with a trans person figuring it out. I know a lot of partnerships don't make it through it. I know a lot of marriages that fall apart. I know a lot that really succeed, but it is tricky to support somebody as they're going through something as intense and self-growth, and who are you going to get today as the journey of coming into yourself as a trans person.
Well, and that's an important
So
part of the process, right? Because you're discovering who you are, and you're finding the things that are truly you, and not just, again, society's version of you that you've been trying to live or trying to portray all this time. And the things you can and can't do just shift entirely, and you've got to find your way through that.
yeah, it's a really cool experience. I think it's like one of the more unique things about being trans, and choosing to step into an authentic self, and figure out what that means and see how that reacts in the world. Like a lot of people don't want to do this. They don't wake up in the morning being like, I'm going to throw my entire world into upheaval and change my whole existence and be so I could be the truest form of myself. It's living life to the fullest in a lot of ways, and I don't know how I got on this tangent.
No, it was perfect. And the thing is about being trans, there's sometimes I wonder if that's part of the thing that brings up so much hatred in cis society about trans people, because we do get all of the things because we get to explore and discover ourselves in a more full and holistic way than I think other people do. We get to be more free. We get to do things that they would be terrified of. And it's sort of like, why do they get to do it? I think that could be a big part of it.
And as that, like, why aren't they doing it? If they're so like, we should be like, I think we all exist as examples of like the human potential.
Mm-hmm.
It might be a little bit of my ego saying that, but like to have so much, like, we're creating our realities,
Mm-hmm.
for lack of a better term. Like we're waking up in the morning being like the reality that 99% of people are thinking about is not the reality that I choose for myself. And I want to change my reality and be a more authentic version of myself in this conscious reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what trans people are kind of an evolution of where we've been as humans and where we're going. We are choosing to cast aside the uh, what a structured belief system is, and go for feeling, like go for what's in the heart and then the soul and in the body and mind, and all the chakra congruences and all of the pieces of the self that say, hey, this is who you are inside. um, like that's a evolved state. I will hold that as a high honor and a gift of being able to live this. And I do think that makes, people who aren't able to feel what that feels like, and why are we so happy even when they're like, trying to pound us into the ground with whatever they're choosing that day. But why do we still thrive? Why are we still all filled with joy? Because we get to do this, because like get to be the most ideal version of ourselves. That's why, like, that's easy. You could do this. Like, there's nothing that like, and that's what I really look forward to, when that piece of it snaps. And I think like our generation was like, we figured it out at earlier than the generation before us. And the kids today, well, they're already at such a place that I am so honored to meet teenagers and even kids even younger than that aren't playing within this binary,
Mm-hmm.
that aren't play even just in their language and the way they act around people that they care about. It's so different and so refreshing to see, a major structure of how we thought we had to exist shift. And that's going to freak out a lot of people who are scared and don't see the potential of, oh, this is where we're all going. These people, this is going to lift us all up. This is going to bring us to, a next phase of what we can all be without having to worry about these conditions put upon us by society that's not even ours anymore. Like, so far removed from any of that.
Well, it's just kind of funny and sad how much of society, how much people not only are afraid of change and the unknown, but
Mm-hmm.
afraid of being outside of the box, afraid of not having very rigid constraints for what everything can and should be. Like being
Mm-hmm.
outside of that makes people really uncomfortable, and it's very sad.
It is, and I that's why I had talked about a little bit before we started about how I was really glad to be traveling around and doing a job as a trans person, as a trans woman, and interacting with people and places that wouldn't necessarily, meet a trans woman on an average Tuesday afternoon, and being in a situation where I'm I'm asking them questions about themselves, and I'm meeting them where they are, and hopefully they had, like, if I'm the only trans person they meet ever, I hope that I made a good impression on them, and that's what I kept with me the whole time
Mhm.
that I did this job. And it was really kind of great to see the responses, and either people didn't notice that I was trans, which is possible, but or it was just so was I really tried to hold security in myself and who I am, and that I was reflected back at me, and that 90% of the time it was a super positive experience. And I wonder where all of this heavy rhetoric is coming from, because the people that I've met aren't you know they're not the we're not who they say we are to them, and they don't seem to be as, like, what's the word, hateful.
Mhm.
uh,
Militantly
uh,
anti-trans as the
yeah,
news like is
yeah,
making it seem right now. Yeah.
yeah. It's really, I'm really curious as to where and how, and I think we're gonna see. But
We cover it a lot on our news show that we do on Monday nights, Transistence, how a lot of that comes from the Christian right, the very
Mhm.
evangelical and very hard-nosed Christian right that stick to one ideal, and they've taken a lot of influence in our government, and they're providing basically the script for politicians to
Mhm.
follow. And so they're going out, and we're covering news articles that are seeming like Groundhog Day, where it's the same thing over and
Yeah.
over and over again. Not only the topic, but the same, like, almost verbatim statements about who these evil trans people are, and it's stuff that's completely fabricated lies, and just seems ridiculous to begin with. But there's so many of them saying it now that I think it's getting traction. And so, but that's where it's coming
Uh,
from. There's sort of
yeah.
like puppet masters behind that are from a couple very powerful Christian right organizations that are controlling that.
Well, this is probably a conversation for another day, but I'm wondering how come we can't use that power and get politicians to repeat our rhetoric over and over again? So, well, we could talk about that another time. This is a very deep hole, and I just want to wish, like, I guess for anybody who might be watching this, I my experience out in the world is not the evil, like, we all hate, everybody hates trans people, that the that the world would make us believe exists out there. So if you're trans, don't be afraid of everyone. Like, most people don't hate us in my experience.
Yeah, exactly. The actual on the ground experience that you'll have is often much better than you would
Mhm.
expect, and even in some of the places where you would figure you would get you get a lot of crap.
Yeah.
You mentioned
And
something
I've
earlier that I
been,
kind of wanted to comment on too. That when I
yeah.
came out personally, I had a lot of people not only commenting and because I came out at work and didn't get not only a lot of support, but a lot of people saying how brave I was and how impressed they were with my courage, and that sort of did the same thing it sounds like it did for you, where I was just like, oh, this seeing me being able to be myself unlocks something from
Hmm.
other people, gives them permission to be
Hmm.
themselves. And I'm like, well, that's even another reason to be out and be visible and to talk about who I am and what my story is.
Hmm. Yeah, I 100% agree, that it's like, it's part of our gift. I've had some pretty amazing spiritual experiences that have confirmed that knowledge to me. Visits from the ancestors, as they say, to really help me understand, like, we've had sacred roles in humanity over long periods of time. As long as there's been humans, there's been a form of trans person. And that's really fascinating. It's cool to think about that, what points in the evolution of humanity's history were, like, kind of, influenced by a trans person. I like thinking about that when I think about, like, oh, it's getting rough out there in the news, but, like, we've been around forever. It's a high honor to be trans. High honor.
Mm-hmm.
It's really sacred.
So, we've talked a lot about your positive experience. What are some of the things you've struggled with through your transition?
Ooh, um, they all deal with myself. I had a really hard time letting go of male privilege, and all of the things that I had gained just by being a, visually passing male, and all of the ways I was able to move through society, and how much easier it was, especially with work. That was probably the hardest thing for me to resolve and let go of. And now, being on the other side of, it's a real mind twister, to experience the direct opposite of, what I would consider, like, male privilege within my career, and now my skills haven't changed. The only thing is, a marker on my ID and these amazing, my amazing self that I have grown. That's really, and my skills are all the same. My credits are all the same. My references are all the same. But wow, do people act differently towards me now? And it's endlessly entertaining to me because I'm just like, cool. Great. I get the like, I guess I don't know anything. I guess I get fine. I guess I'll just be talked over. I get to just sit there and like let that happen and experience that and feel it and it's and there's really nothing I can do about it other than like quit the job, which is what I did the last time. Just being like, there's no like I'm I'm never going to get recognized because you put me into this like box that I was never in before, but that's my problem. So now I get to so I guess yeah, letting go of an addiction to male privilege in the way of like being able to move through society without like question. That was a struggle for me,
Hmm.
and I would say kept me from fully embracing myself and transitioning in all fashions, socially, work, family, all those things. I think my privilege that I had developed just by being by being a dude presenting person in a artistic and male dominated industry made me, I was like, oh, I'm never gonna do anything, and it's not true. I'm still working. I'm still doing great things, and I'm working with even greater people now. It's just it's a funny over here. So that would be my biggest struggle, and self doubt. I wrote a lot of the back and forth waves. I've said it a few times, but I was when people talk about, there's the committed trans person who's like, I'm trans, and then like 3 years later they're still progressing forward, and then there's the I'm figuring it out trans person where it's kind of like very slow, but they get there. I was the I know I'm trans and I'm going to do this, but wait, I'm too scared. Not yet. I'm going to go back a little. And then, no, I'm trans. I'm going to do this. No, I'm scared. I'm scared. I'll go back a little. And then I was that kind of, so that was that kind of transition.
Hmm.
So I would say that, yeah, those are my two biggest struggles.
Yeah, that's a great point to bring up. A lot of times, just in of the word transition, when we talk about it, it it elicits sort of a thought of you go from one side to the other, and that's the journey, and that's how you're supposed to do it. And with being transgender, the journey that you're on isn't linear. It is more
Mm-hmm.
swirly. There is some back and forth. There has to be some ebb and flow as you discover yourself because it's all new and you don't really know what you will like. You're kind of thrusting yourself into this really quickly. That again, cis women grow up with gradually and figure it out as they go. And so you do have to kind of dip your toe in and sort of jump in
Mm-hmm.
sometimes and then go, oh, nope, that isn't either that isn't what I like or that isn't I'm not comfortable with that now. And allow yourself really
Mm-hmm.
that ebb and flow, that back and forth. And like I said, just be more swirly about it. Like the fact that you were comfortable with something last week, but you're not comfortable with it today,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that what you did last week was wrong. It just means
Yep.
that, today you're feeling a little different and maybe it'll come back, maybe it won't. But it's the journey and figuring it all out. And you just kind of have to let yourself go through that and figure it out and don't
Mm-hmm.
put too much pressure on yourself. I feel like people feel a pressure to do all the things, the hormones, the surgeries and everything, put it all on the calendar, follow it. You can't back off of it. And so that's why the term transitions can be a little problematic for some people. And yeah,
Yeah.
we've been talking about that a lot. So I just wanted to mention that, yeah, for those of you watching out there, transition doesn't mean you have to start here and you have to get to there. There's so much more in
Yeah.
between. Let yourself be free.
And it's totally okay. Like that's part of this whole process. Like if you go too far, it's okay to take a few steps back. If you don't go far enough, it's okay to take a few steps forward. Like the pressure of like, oh, it's like this is about doing what feels good for the self, without, we're casting off society's belief of what we should be in the first place. So like letting our own insular society dictate what we should be is kind of like, kind of the antithesis of being outside of the box. It's like, okay, we're going to live outside of the box, but then we're going to make our own box to have to live in. I like the way that you put the linearity of transition. Like it's not transition from A to B. It's just transition from, one self to a different self.
Mm-hmm.
And that can look whatever it looks like. And yeah, be okay to try things and then say, oh, that didn't work, or say, yeah, that worked, or I want to go deeper next time, or I won't do that. It's like being human, sometimes you don't know until you're already through it.
So how far along do you feel you are in your process of discovering yourself and getting to be the person that you want to be?
Oh, I'm truly the person that I want to be. I'm growing into that more and more into the self every day, and I'm in a relationship that I'm highly proud of, and I have many other relationships in the world that I'm highly proud of, and really deep friendships and close, strong, unconditional love relationships, and I feel really lucky to have them. And yeah, I feel like I am more and more myself than I've ever been, and I think like I am. I stopped kind of thinking about where I want to go because it just seems like I'm being taken there. Like I want to get more Botox, but I don't know if that's like the intention of the question. It's like I feel like your question was like more of a inner soul, like where am I in my self-acceptance and in my journey, and I'm like really secure in myself. I know who I am, and I know what I want to do in the world, and I know how I want to be seen. And I think I'm like really pretty much there in myself, to where I'm actually have to think about the words to answer this question, like what it feels like to dig up the words to answer the question, because it's like, oh, I've really grown into who I am. It's a good question. You can see it on my face. It's like I can feel the joy of where I'm at. Like, oh, I'm in a good place right now. So
When you bring up such a wonderful point as well, the self-acceptance, we're going through the stages of trying to gain self-acceptance as we're figuring out our style, as we're figuring out what we want to do, where our journey is going to take us. They're not separate. They're happening at exactly the same time. And that causes a lot of confusion for us because there's a lot of different emotions happening at the same time.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're all new because I don't know what your world was like before transitioning, but I was emotional, but I wouldn't say I was emotional.
Mhm.
I had emotions, but I wouldn't say I was like feeling things all the time, and like you know like a nice breeze with the smell of roses now conjures up feelings instead of just like, oh, that's the wind in my face. It's like subtle things like that for me were big. Oh, I lost my own tangent by describing something. So yeah, feeling things so deeply, I think is one of the big shifts that I've had. Like I really experience. I had a lot of empathy before, but I think I feel it more. It's more tangible. It's more able to put it into words, or tears or laughter, more than just the understanding of where someone was at, and like being able to reflect that understanding, but actually feeling the emotion and showing it, and putting myself in those places too. Yeah, it's a wellspring.
Where do you feel that you're at with in relation to dysphoria? Is that something that still comes and trips you up every once in a while?
Yes, I will talk about that. Yeah, I would say that I definitely have days where I don't feel myself and I can't see it. And so I'll tend to, do a little bit more hiding or, you know, put on my sweatpants and kind of like hide out until I can feel it again. I was talking to someone pretty recently about how um, being trans to me is like it's a magic trick that we're doing I'm doing to myself more than I'm doing to the society outside. It's like I'm this person. This is who I am. I'm 100% in belief of myself. I exist. I am real. And when that kind of gets tripped up, it becomes harder to portray and is it present? I don't think it's present. It's like it gets harder to keep that glamour magic trick alive.
Mhm.
And and then when that happens, the dysphoria comes knocking and goes, "Hey, you can't really do it. You've never been able to do it. You just go back to hiding out." And uh,
Oh,
and then I have
yeah.
to like no, I know who you are. It's cool. You're just mad because I'm hotter than you now. Go over there. Let's go. Sit back down. Why can't you just enjoy this ride? You don't have to do anything anymore. So,
So well put. Just that feeling of no, you've like imposter syndrome, but you've been
mhm,
fooling yourself this whole time. That euphoria you were feeling, that was just delusional, and
yeah.
here's the reality, and it just smacks you upside the head.
And that's what's strange because to me the dysphoria is the non-reality.
Hmm.
Because if most of the time the euphoria and the love of the self and the looking people in the eyes and the connecting and all of that is the standard state, then the dysphoria is the non-standard state. And that too is what I kind of look to is like, okay, I can let myself feel this for a day because it's not my standard mode of operating. Obviously, they want to talk to me about something or make me feel even more structured when they finally go sit down back there. But like having, I honor that part of myself because of, there's something to learn when it comes. Is it me? Is it the world around me? Am I not living within my truth somewhere else? So then it becomes harder to live inside of the truth, this truth. Um, so I tend to like use dysphoria as a checkpoint sometimes if it's not like debilitating. I'm very lucky that I haven't had debilitating dysphoria. I can just kind of, shovel on. Jasmine, have you ever seen me debilitated through dysphoria? I'm asking my partner. She's the closest to me. Yeah. So yeah, I feel really lucky, and I like when other trans people reach out and talk to me about it because I like to give them this like, it's just a magic trick we're doing to ourselves. I
Hmm.
like to talk like reveal that way of describing, some of being trans in the harder moments.
You
It's
talked
like,
about
oh,
kind of like slinking away and putting on your sweatpants and
mhm.
just kind of writing it out. Is there anything that you do as sort of like a routine or whatever when you maybe you need to go out, maybe you can't kind of hide away, or you
Yeah.
just feel like I don't want to avoid this. To Are there any sort of routines that you have to feel yourself again and to put the Mylee face on and see her in the
hmm
mirror again?
I I used to go to the mall and get a pretzel at like a mall pretzel and walk around the mall. And then I'd feel better by the time I got, to the end of the pretzel. I'd be like, okay, I feel pretty good. I've moved my body, but I can't eat gluten anymore. So that trick is gone.
Hmm.
Um, I meditate is something that I do. I really just stop myself and sit down and be quiet and put my phone on do not disturb for a half hour, and I close my eyes and I go within. I do my best to feel within myself, and it's rare that I have to go outside of my normal meditation practice. But when I'm feeling pretty unstable, I'll tend to go and do a longer session, or do it in the middle of the day to reground, and at least try to get my emotional core and my center going, even if I'm not like feeling the euphoria and the vibrating nervous system of full joy.
Mm-hmm.
Meditation helps. Giving myself a treat helps. A long hot like I don't know, is it offensive to say silkwood shower, where it's like so hot it's like burning the dysphoria off of your skin? Have you ever taken those showers? It's like that kind of shower where you're just like, oh, I need a hot shower, I gotta burn this away. It just scrub, and then lotion up, and then you feel soft and nice, and for me, it can start pulling me out of it. Jasmine's laughing at me.
So you mentioned earlier losing male privilege and going through your journey. Is there anything that you feel like you've been able to accomplish because of your journey?
Ooh, yeah. Stable, polyamorous, romantic relationships. Until I really stepped into my authentic self, I was not able to really hold a positive, long-standing, love, intimate relationship. I could hold friendships. I could hold, that have unconditional love, but I was having a really hard time holding romantic relationships because I wasn't authentic. And at the end, I had a partner who we were getting into a fight, and I just shut down. I ran out of things to say because I had run out of shitty male templates to show me what to do, because I had no instinct for it. So she said, it's like, I've gotten to the end of your personality. And and I said, oh shit, you found me out. And I broke up with her. And then I went and started this next phase of my transition after I had realized that, like, oh, I'm never going to have a healthy relationship unless I'm like actually an authentic person. Because I'm always going to start out, the relationship's always going to start out on some sort of lie, some sort of pretense, some sort of thing where they're falling in love with a person who's not truly authentic. And so if I'm going to keep growing, they're eventually not going to have the person that they fell in love with anymore, because that wasn't the authentic being. And then that's not fair to do to them. So I would say having really powerful, really amazing, intimate love relationships is something that romantic love relationships, long-standing, is something that came out of stepping into my authentic trans woman self and living out in the world. Multiple polyamorous relationships. I am surrounded by love.
Hmm.
Hot, sexy love is great. Doesn't work for everybody, but it works for me and my partners.
That's wonderful. What is your favorite thing that you've learned through your journey, either about yourself or the world around you?
Ooh, favorite thing I've learned about myself through my journey. This is such a good question, because what I really want to say is that that Jesus may have been the first trans person in recorded history, but that's a whole other topic for another day. So that is one of the things that I've learned about being trans, or a possible theory that has fascinated me, is that Jesus was trans. And but something that I've learned about I just needed to say that because I wasn't going to be able to think of anything else. Something that I've learned about myself or the world around me through transition. Oh, that that oh, what are the words? It's like I've been really working on like energy and words and getting them to match up. It's it's like the limitless joy that we can tap into in this world of ours. Like that is one of the things that the biggest thing that I've gotten from being trans, is like there is so much beauty and so much joy and so much happiness and so much laughter and so much ability to have everything that one wants in the world once they step into that authentic being. And that is the biggest surprise. Was it the biggest surprise? What was the question? I'm sorry, Emily.
What's your favorite thing that you learned?
Yeah, that's my favorite thing, is that is that stepping into an authentic self only helps the world step closer to you and your dreams, all that.
And finally, what advice do you have to pass on to younger closeted trans folks out there looking to start their journey?
Ooh, don't let anyone tell you how you need to do it. Find your own way. Look at all of us weirdos and figure out which one of us you admire, and then see what we did. Talk to us. But keep it's like keep asking yourself, keep pushing, keep questioning, and don't be afraid to talk to people. Responses to like vocalizing one's curiosity, even, or like is really helpful. So I would say, like, find a friend, do some MDMA, get those guts up, and talk to your friend about, talk to somebody about what you're feeling, and vocalize it rather than keeping it inside, or just inside chat windows with anonymous people on the internet. Even though that can feel really good, there's something about doing it in a reality, and sometimes saying it out loud will, be like, oh, I don't feel like that right now, or reconfirm it. So I would say, like, if you're out there and you're younger and you're thinking about this, and you wake up every day and you think about it, and you go to sleep at night and you think about it, and you search on the internet and you think about it, and you talk to some people on some forums and you think about it, and you have some stuff in a shopping cart and you think about it, and all those things that we do when we're thinking about it, just vocalize it to somebody, and see how it feels, and start there. I had somebody say you can't transition on an island, and damn it if they weren't right. I was like, no, I can transition on an island. I could just pop out a beautiful woman one day and I'll be myself. It'll be fine. And I moved to Manhattan and it still wasn't enough of an island. And, so you can't transition on an island. Find people. There's lots of us out here now. There's others.
I love that. Vocalize it and make it real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, whatever it is.
Well, Mylee Blake, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story and your advice for other trans folks out there.
Yeah, this has been awesome. Thank you so much, Emily. I appreciate it.